I can add the two of us in there, and then it'll just go. So
Cool. Cool.
5 seconds. Good noon, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome y'all into Linked in the End Zone. This is episode 3, brought to you by Sideline Sports. I'm your host, Lindy and Zone, half of the LinkedIn podcast, and this is going to be another interesting one, if you want to put it that way. So for this one, I got another special guest, and this is the first time working with them, and but he has been quite the Twitter warrior and contributor to the Talkin 215 podcast. Tom Stakes, good to meet you, man. Like we talked backstage, good to
Yep.
digitally meet you in person, man. And how you doing today?
Doing good, man. Appreciate you reaching out. Always appreciate a talking 215 shout out as well. Like you showing me love for that. You showing us love. Always going to give love back. So I love to hop on and talk birds with you.
Right on. I think it's only fair and a good service to appreciate the level of content creators and contributors on this platform, much like the much like the spewed nonsense that we have been hearing, and I think you know what I'm talking about with like NFL Network and a certain somebody talking about Jalen Hurts and not reading defenses, but that's not the here nor there for this
Man.
episode because that deserves a whole other episode in itself.
Hmm.
So so what
Yeah.
with that said, I gotta know I gotta hear from your perspective because it's going into this game. A lot of people, I wouldn't say a lot of people, but there was quite a few people that were on different pages with this and everything. So I wanted to go over a couple of the ways that led to the Eagles' demise against the 49ers. And it's funny because it feels like it all started from when San Fran walks into the building. They're in all black, like they're about to attend a funeral, and we're taking it all casually. Like it almost had the feeling of we got this.
Hmm.
And well, it certainly was not the case when it was all said and done.
Yeah.
But like your initial thoughts going into this game, and we already know that San Francisco had this circled on their schedule for a long time, but initially, what were your thoughts going into this game, and how surprised or not that you were when it was all said and done and we seen the result of us getting slaughtered at home?
Man, I didn't think that we were going to get beat like that, honestly. It was definitely a thought through my mind that this could be a game you lose, after coming off 3 huge wins over 3 really good
Hmm.
teams. Really, really tough games. Eventually we'd let up, but they just seemed to hit a wall. It was sometimes it's about when you play a team. I
Yeah.
don't think the talent gap is as wide as we saw, but I know the 49ers are a good team that, when they come in prepared and they play their A game, you're going to be in trouble if you don't play yours. And that's exactly what happened. So we just weren't on our game. Um, and they took advantage of it. They didn't let us hang around and make plays like the Bills did and like Dallas did, like the Chiefs did in the second half. They shut the door and they were the one team that was making plays. So all credit to them for coming in prepared and showing that, if you don't play your A game against the Eagles, against the 49ers,
Hmm.
a lot like the Eagles, you could play your A game against the Eagles and still lose the game. Same with the 49ers. So, if you don't play your A game, it's definitely going to go the opposite direction for sure.
That's how I felt for the majority of my assessment going into this game. And on the previous episode of the LinkedIn podcast, I was warning people that San Francisco is a team they've built themselves like a well-oiled machine, to whereas you get into the um, you out there in the working force, and you're kind of in an industrial atmosphere. You're working like in an industrial trade, and you're working for a company that has a bunch of robots, and those are programmed to make, next to no mistakes unless there's operator error involved. And that's how it felt to me, between Coach Shanahan and, everybody else involved, players included. That's the 49ers MO. And they have shown that for quite a few years now, outside of that 3-game losing streak where they had
Right.
a bit of a bump in the road. And we can only hope that the Eagles don't go through the same thing. But then we start at the beginning of the game. The Eagles look well. They look to be in control for their first two red zone trips to start, but you can't finish those drives with 3 points. The
Hmm.
49ers are a team where if you leave the door open, they're I think to this point, when you talk about 4 quarters of football, San Francisco is a unit that is, I wouldn't say a lot more capable, but they have proven to be more capable in making the proper adjustments that can certainly spell doom for a team that's somewhat ill prepared or behind the 8 ball. And after the Eagles' first two offensive possessions, I didn't know how the rest of the game was going to turn out, because, like I said, you leave the door open for a team like that.
Hmm.
You're almost asking to be beat.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, yeah, no, I was gonna say exactly. But I was thinking about this the other day, and even if we do score a touchdown or even two touchdowns on that drive, on those drives, the 49ers, man, their offense, I don't know,
Mhm.
man. They just seem to figure it out against our defense, and there were guys running wide open. And I don't know if more points on the board would have stopped that. Obviously, we needed to score a lot more to win the game, and keep going with them. But early in the game, like that, like I was thinking back on that as well, and everyone thought, like, if they would have scored a touchdown or two, it would have been different. But man, I mean, our defense had to make stops eventually, right? And I don't think that early in the game that the 49ers game plan would have changed much. They were throwing all over us. They ran the ball all over us and just looked like we hit a wall. So, we can't end drives and field goals. Like, you need to get touchdowns down there for sure. But it just seemed like the 49ers had like a haymaker cocked ready to throw it. And they threw a couple of them and we ate every single one of them and dropped like a rock. So, it was pretty rough. But yeah, man, I mean, got to clean things up in the red zone, got to be better. But the defense, the story of the game to me is the defense. When our offense is on the field, they're giving us fits. They're making it tough to even get into 3rd and 5,
Mhm.
while we're giving them 2nd and 1, convert, 3rd and 2, convert, and then you just break eventually. You got to get off the field on 3rd down. So to me, it's like, if our defense isn't tough on 3rd downs, and they're deep, and the opponent, whoever the opponent is getting us into multiple 3rd downs that are tougher to convert, we're going to be at a disadvantage. And that's how you make our offense look worse. The defense has to get off the field and the offense has to stay on the field. I mean, it sounds simple, but that's the biggest difference to me, because when you're going up against these tougher teams in the playoffs, like the 49ers, and the Cowboys even have
Mhm.
a really good defense, though, if those teams can put you in those bad positions and get you off the field, your offense isn't even going to be a factor anyway. So our defense really needs to do a better job of getting off the field, and our offense just needs to do a better job on 1st down specifically, so we can get into those easier 2nd and shorts, and we can be the team that converts. So I think that's the biggest difference in all this, and a couple touchdowns here and there aren't going to change that overall factor to me. So I think everyone is rightfully focused on red zone, like we were
Mhm.
saying, like you were saying. But to me, it's 3rd downs on either side of the ball. That's the little detail that I'm going to watch going forward in this season to see how it happens. We're even giving up 3rd and longs right now. I think we've given up more 3rd and longs than anyone in the league. So it's pretty rough. Or we're bottom 5 or something. So that has to change, or that comes first to me for everything.
This is the same defense that almost gave up a 4th and 24 against Kansas City if Christian Watson if he catches that ball,
Yeah.
because that wasn't that was still a catchable pass. And
Yeah. I mean, but that's
like,
what I'm talking about. Force them into 4th and 24. I mean, what are they going to do? Like, yeah, it's a catchable pass, but that's a very low percentage play. A lot can go
it
wrong.
is.
If you're in 3rd and 5, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2, every drive, 2nd and 1, 2nd and 2. I mean,
Hmm.
it's backbreaking over and over and over. You got to force negative plays, incompletions, get to those uncomfortable 3rd and longs, because that's, like, obviously we're making a good point in the fact that they're not even stopping 3rd and longs, and almost had a 4th and long completed on them. But, um, the more chances they get at that, the more you'll see that it's low percentage. Teams shouldn't convert those often. And so you just have to keep getting them over and over and putting teams in uncomfortable positions. And if our defense, you know, it's really about like the attitude of being tough and physical. I think the effort is there. And there was a big
Yeah.
thing on Darius Slay being, a little sensitive toward the media calling out his effort. Um, if if the effort is there, then the physicality and the aggression and the attitude has to come with it too. And I think they're rallying to the ball. They're trying to make plays. It's just the point of attack, the tackling was bad. The execution there. So I'm not blaming any coaches either. It's execution to me. It's the guys on the
Yeah.
field making the plays that are there. And um, I could see a little play calling here and there be different, but better on first downs, converting on third downs, getting off the field on third downs, and then just being physical at the point of attack. We see the efforts there. It's just actually getting it done, executing. So those are my keys right there for the 49ers game. And you could even say that that's kind of the keys going into the Dallas game as well.
Right. And I think from, we talked about it from talking about it from a defensive standpoint, and I think one of the biggest things was, you know, the 49ers being able to settle in after having back-to-back three and outs. Their very first possession, the Eagles get a sack on Brock Purdy. They did not sack him again until 6:46 left in the third quarter. So you have a 49ers squad that did not take their foot off the gas. During going into the third quarter, they had as much as 21 unanswered points. And I think a lot of it stemmed from, and there was a tweet talking about the run game,
Mm-hmm.
and I felt early I was trying to figure out who was the tone setter behind all of it, especially in terms of the run. I couldn't figure out, like, who was out there setting the tone for the rest of the game, because the
Right.
Eagles came out passing on the very first play, and Hurts had Jack Stoll coming open with about 2 yards of separation down the field you know on what almost looked like a seam, and he chose not to throw it. So I mean, there's so many different areas that you can look at, and then
Mhm.
3 points instead of seven can get you beat against good teams,
Right.
if they close the door early, like they were saying.
Right.
And then you just keep going on about it.
And
I
I think
look at I
I,
look at how well. I'll go ahead.
no, no, you're all right. I was just gonna say, like, on that point, you mentioned the Jack Stoll thing. I think that, everything was a perfect storm. I said that early on in
Mhm.
this. Everything kind of was a perfect storm for us to get beat by this team. And, you have Jack Stoll open, but do you trust Jack Stoll? If that's Dallas Goddard, right? Maybe he throws that ball.
Yeah.
You have Nick Morrow missing that tackle on Debo Samuel. If that's Zach Cunningham, he might make
Mhm.
that tackle, right? So, like, everything, obviously we don't want to use injuries as an excuse, but it was just everything compiled at the same exact time. It felt, they hit this wall physically. They haven't been playing their best football. There's injuries all over the field, at key spots that, they're not our most key spots, but they're just those little factors that everything kind of can build up. And I think that getting some guys back healthy, and getting rolling on that will make a big difference. Getting rolling on the little things, the little details, So, um, yeah, no, it's absolutely like it's funny because we talk about a loss, and you're surprised, like asking who is the tone setter and things like that. These are things that Eagles fans haven't really had to talk about a whole lot. in
Hmm.
games. They've not lost a lot of games over this past 30 game stretch or whatever it is. And especially with Jalen Hurts, Jalen Hurts is usually the guy making the plays, being being the aggressor, being the force behind the offense, the driving force of this offense, and he wasn't able to do anything for us. We just kind of we got beaten every area of the game. Having those little injury bugs, bite us and in the wrong spots, and now you have unreliable players at certain positions that you can't beat. You can't, even if those guys were in, you still, maybe you don't even have a chance. So it's like the 49ers are that good of a team where if anything, any little things start to go wrong, you have a couple little injuries, and they'll find ways to take advantage of that. They'll
Hmm.
they'll they're the most buttoned up team, I think, from top to bottom. And the only question about the 49ers, if we're really being honest, was Brock Purdy. Kind of reminds me of last year's Eagles team, where not a lot of people believed in Jalen Hurts and said the same thing about us. If Jalen Hurts is good, then they're a really tough team to beat. They have talent everywhere else. It's the same thing with Brock Purdy. If you give him time in the pocket, he can make throws, get the ball out to who he needs to get the ball out to, and use those weapons. They're an unbeatable team. Like they are the best team in the league. They have the best overall roster, I'd say, with their defense as well as the offensive weapons they have. So if Brock Purdy plays his best game and you can't get pressure on him, and I think that's part of what happened on Sunday, combined with all those little, you know, certain guys being out and certain guys missing an assignment here and there, it's not like you lose by much. It's just a little. It's little things here and there, and then next thing you know, it's a blowout, because that's the type of team that will take advantage of that stuff, and that's really what we saw.
I think the same can be said. Now, not every quarterback can be Tom Brady, but I think the same can be said for a lot of quarterbacks in this league. And there's a lot of dependence on, well, who are the playmakers around them? Do you trust them to, make the plays at the right time, run the correct route, that, and the third. But you give any quarterback that length of time
Mm-hmm.
in the pocket to make a play and trust them to do so, there's going to be a lot of successful quarterbacks in the league. And
Yeah.
well, so long as they didn't have the kind of game that Jalen Hurts had in this game, where you're eventually taking a sack after about 6 seconds in the pocket. And
Right.
I think there was two plays where he had 5 to 6 seconds to make a decision. And he like there was I think there was a lack of poise across the board for the entire team. And
Yep.
especially when your defense is very lackluster, to say the least, when they're giving up drives of 85, 90, 75, 77, 75. That's every scoring drive for the 49ers. And like the craziest part to me, 456 total yards. San Francisco only needed 57 plays to score 42 points on just 8 possessions.
Yeah, that's
The
crazy.
league average is about 62 to 63 plays at 10 to 12 possessions. That just screams absolute dominance on their end, where a lot of a lot of what we seen was, you know, your first line of defense, the D line had plenty of moments where they were, pretty much tired.
Right.
You got your second line of defense, the linebackers who, N'Kobe Dean goes to IR for a second straight time. You got two guys in Zach Cunningham who missed this game, who should be back for Dallas, who has been, I think, the top tackler in terms of linebackers. He was close to being cut, if not cut. Nicholas Moore was in the same situation,
Practice
because
squad.
Cunningham was brought in at the same time as Miles Jack.
Mm-hmm.
Miles ended up retiring and then signed elsewhere.
Yeah.
So it's like there's just no high level of continuity at the linebacker core, at a position where we already don't value it very much.
Mm-hmm.
When you have that much of an issue at the second level, and people want to talk about the secondary, when linebackers are in coverage like that, that speeds up the secondary, and you're almost asking for them to get beat because they're constantly having to go east and west to make these tackles.
Yep.
They're going to get exhausted.
Yeah, everything kind of just built up. Like we're basically covering every base. It's you can talk about that loss in so many ways because everything really did build up to what happened in it. So we gotta get moving forward to this Dallas game because
Hmm.
at the end of the day, it's like um, there's a lot to clean up, and this is a big game for both teams. So it's definitely something that we can't see against Dallas, or the same result's going to happen because they're a really good team too.
Yeah, they are. So, with that said, we have the rest of the scope of the remaining schedule for Philly, and we got the big primetime game this week going into Dallas. Uh, they have been undefeated at home against us for what it's worth, regardless if Gardner Minshew played one of those games. We're still 0-4 as of recently going into Dallas. But aside from that team specifically, I'm trying to figure out for myself, where does this leave the defense going forward, because regardless of them getting a little bit healthier, they have fallen to fourth. They're still top five in run defense, but they have fallen to fourth after being number one at allowing 90 a game, dead last on third down, fourth worst in red zone efficiency, 20, 24th in 24th in the league at forcing turnovers in terms of interceptions, 28th in first downs allowed through passing. Like across the board, there's a lot of low rankings for how they look defensively. Sean Desai has already come out and admitted some fault in the 49ers game. So it's
Yeah.
it's like, where are we going from here from a defensive perspective, knowing that you're coming up on the remaining five or so games before the playoffs, and this team's trying to lock up the number one. They're trying to lock up the number one seed in the NFC. There's a lot of cards stacked against them when you when you talk about it from a defensive perspective. It's getting rough.
Yeah, it's very true. They really haven't been good on defense, and for the most part this season, one of the main reasons I said that Jalen Hurts was and still is to me the MVP of the NFL is because they've had the biggest moments and clutch moments on offense, and a lot of it is because the defense can't get stops.
Mm-hmm.
Both Washington games, you think about, it's not just the good teams. They've stopped a couple good teams. To be honest, their best couple games were against Miami, Kansas City, which is weird to see that. So that's really the only thing that, if you want a positive spin on that, that's the only thing I can think of is that in some big games they've come up and played well, and when they don't, the offense has usually done it. Unfortunately for the 49ers, they're good on both sides of the ball. So you have to do something on either have to score a lot on their defense or stop their offense. You can't do neither. So usually the Eagles have done a good job this year playing complementary football,
Mm-hmm.
but that scares you going into the playoffs because you have to play those better teams, and you can't, if you can't score on the 49ers, then you might, the defense might have to either that's all I'm going to say is that come playoff time, either the defense is going to have to step up in a game and help out so we can, we don't have to go off on offense. Um, or our offense is going to have to win a shootout, and it's hard to win a shootout against a 49ers type defense. We even did a pretty good job against Dallas, but there were just a few plays here and there that they were an inch from scoring, and there were a lot of times where we just like hung on by a thread to stop Dallas early in the season. And if we give them those same opportunities, they're going to score more, and we're going to have to score more. And I think I'd take us in a shootout over Dallas rather than a shootout against the 49ers. If they start scoring a lot of points at the 49ers, you're not going to be in a good spot because their defense is really hard to score on. So, like the Washington Commanders, you can come back against. Even we did it against the Buffalo Bills.
Hmm.
But it's hard to score against the 49ers. So that's really the team that gives you the most, like, kind of drawback if you're talking about a game becoming a shootout. Um, I think we could, like I said, I think any other defense in the NFL we could score on if need be. But that's one defense that I could definitely say is the toughest one to crack. So um, it might just be a 49ers thing, but I don't want to see this defense suffering on third down, like I was saying, in the red zone. For the remainder of the season. Hopefully they can get on track, get some confidence, get some health back. Um, but yeah, it's a problem because it's tough to do that against the better teams.
Because I think one thing that they weren't able to do in that game is limit the amount of success that San Francisco had on first and second down. Because I think it was they were deep in their own territory, almost backed up in their own end zone. I think it was a 2nd and 15 or so after a penalty, and Purdy gets it to Brandon Ayuk for a gain of 12, and then it sets him up in the 3rd and 3. Like,
Right,
no,
right,
that's the kind of stuff that you can't allow to happen. And
right,
then the
right,
Eagles offensively have been having some of those same issues as well, where they just can't get into enough third and shorts, and they're having to fight, the
right.
intermediate or the deeper ends in terms of downs. But and then I had to think of this, and we're talking about the some of our past matchups going into the end of the year here, and how it's shaped the Eagles to be sitting at 10-2. And I had to ask myself, which which game on this schedule, if any, can you say was a convincing win for the Eagles?
Yeah,
I don't know if I can think of one outside of maybe Tampa in week
Tampa.
3,
Yeah.
where they dominated them on the ground and the defense only gave up 11 points. I
Hmm.
mean, I think that's probably the closest complete game that the Eagles have arguably played. The
Yeah.
rest of them displayed their resiliency and perseverance and not giving up. But none of those you can go back and look at and say, you know what, I'm totally convinced that this is the best team in the NFL right now.
Yeah, they had a pretty, I think their win over Miami was pretty strong. Their defense let up 10 points. Hurts had that tipped interception for a touchdown,
Yeah,
which got the
that
game
one's fair
close.
too.
And then late in the game they kind of just showed, their offensive ability and went down and scored
Hmm.
couple times after Jalen's you know, unfortunate interception for a touchdown. So I think that that they definitely have some opportunity here to have some of those more convincing wins. But they need to actually go out and execute and do it. Whether it's against the Giants or the Cardinals or Seattle or Dallas, doesn't even really make a difference. They need to come out and play a complete game and start getting on track because not every season's going to be perfect, especially coming off a Super Bowl. But you're here, you have the opportunity now, and none of that matters. What
No,
matters now is I would say throw all the stats out the window and just start playing better and get ready for this Super Bowl run. All that other stuff in the past is in the past at this point to me. So hopefully that's the mindset they have and realize, and I'm sure it is. I'm sure that's kind of all NFL players' mindset. So that's how I think they're looking at it. Um, that they've been bad on there's been patterns of them being bad in certain spots and all that, but they have the chance to say, look, man, this is all hands on deck. We got Cunningham back healthy. We got Shaq Leonard in the building. We got our D line's healthy. Our secondary's healthy. Like, why not get on track in these last 5 games of the season? 5 games is, you think about all the games that have passed, and you're like, man, the season's going by quick, but there's still another month of football at 5 games of football. football football left. Sorry, I've been sick, by the way. I'm coughing off camera and stuff, but
No
um
worries.
yeah, so no, there's still 5 games of football left, 5 times that they get to take the field and try to get wins. This season's far from over. And one loss at the end of the year against a contending team, and now you're going into Dallas. We haven't won since 2017. It feels like everything's about to
Yeah.
take a turn for the worse. So there's still 5 games left. We just got to stay the course, and they're focused. Losing faith in this guy and losing faith in this team as a whole. It's not smart. We've seen that. We've had our moments of doubt, and they prove us wrong. So
Yeah.
we're harsh fans, and that we're gonna express ourselves in that way. But I think it's still a long season, still a lot of time to go, and they have a chance to in this next 5 games to show that they're not a struggling team. They're going to get hot and they're going to go into the playoffs with some momentum. So I think that's what we want to all see, and that's what they want to do. And there's no excuses. It's everyone's in. Everyone's all hands on deck. So let's see what happens. We got Dallas Goddard coming back too. So
Hmm.
everyone's healthy. Everyone's getting healthy now, and it's not a sprint. It's a marathon. This NFL season goes fast for fans, but it really is a long journey, and 5 games left. That's a long time. A
Yeah,
lot
it
can
is.
change. Think about all that's changed in the last 5 games for us even. And then the 5 games before that. Like so it's still a whole quarter, whole section of the season, whole segment of the season to get through. So I'm pretty excited to see what happens, and I think it's going to be a lot of good things for the Eagles.
There's certainly plenty to look forward to. And it's funny that after a loss like this, you see a lot of the same regurgitated criticisms, and
Mhm.
people just want to dogpile and create this massive snowball effect. And Jalen can't read the defense, and
Yeah, like come on, man,
like,
it's
no,
crazy.
no, no, let that die on its own. You don't give it attention, it's not going to matter. But to an extent the tape doesn't lie. Both sides of the ball did make plenty of mistakes, and they've have. So there's still a level of team building there. And it's kind of hard to make that transition. And for as much heat as Brian Johnson has been getting, it's his first year as an offensive coordinator, trying to take the reins over of a guy who's been shown to be well proven and was part of a group that took this team to the Super Bowl last year. Like, there's the level of expectation is just such at a high level, it's insane. So aside of that, yeah, I mean, and then you speak of Dallas Goddard, I still secretly want Zach Ertz to bring back some
Yeah.
of those awesome 12 personnel packages that we haven't had in a while. But that's
Mhm.
not that's not the here nor there. That's a topic for another day. But being 33 and a half minutes in, I think that time has come to an end, because I think you only had about 20 or 30 minutes
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah, yeah, we
But
could wrap it. That'd be cool. Appreciate
right,
that.
right on. So I mean, yeah, this was, even then there was still an awesome amount of material that we were able to cover.
Mhm.
And just like Hertz has said, flush this down the toilet and get ready for the next game.
Yeah.
So you can appreciate the level of high standard and professionalism that the Eagles have, really built, uh, from a organizational standpoint. Just after watching how this team collapsed, and like, all the talk about 19 and 2020 and where they were and where they are now is just almost night and day. So from a mentality standpoint, I don't think you can ever count them out anymore. It's
Yeah.
just seeing that execution being done on the field. So
Mhm.
again, I certainly appreciate the amount of time that you were able to give me to create this, at this episode of Linked in the End Zone, Tom. Like I said backstage, it was awesome getting to meet you in
Yeah.
person, digitally,
Yeah.
on camera, for what it's worth. And yeah, this was awesome to record, and to thank everybody else for tuning in to episode 3 of Linked in the End Zone, courtesy and brought to you by Sideline Sports. I have been Lindy, and if you got any shout outs, Tom, go on ahead, man. Talk about the
Yeah.
two, talking 215
Yeah.
and all that. What you got going on?
Yeah, well, first of all, appreciate you for having me on. We again, like you said, we definitely talked about a lot of the stuff that people is on people's minds. I think the big thing is just everyone relax, trust this team, have
Hmm.
a good rest of the season. So I appreciate that, and yeah, man, check me out on Twitter at Tom Stakes, and then Talkin 215 at Talkin 215. Um, link the Twitter handles in my bio, so you can check it out there. I'm on that podcast. We usually do a weekly show. Um, it's available Apple, Spotify, everything. So check that out. If you're a podcast listener, we also do a live show. So that's on Saturday nights. Literally, we broadcast from a bar in Delaware. So check that out. If you see me post about it and you see clips from it, if you think that looks cool, check that out. Um, so we put out content in any way. Follow the Twitter handle as well. There's always cool stuff going on there. There's clips. They post everything that we say on the podcast. So um, again, appreciate me jumping on here, being able to talk about what I do a little bit on the side here with Talking 215, and just having me on to talk ball, man. I appreciate it, and wish you the best of luck in yours. And stay in touch. Stay in touch with me. You know, keep reaching out, and we can continue to collaborate.
Absolutely, the pleasure was all mine. And
Cool.
with that said, everybody, again, that'll conclude LinkedIn, the End Zone on Sideline Sports. I'll catch you next time for episode 4. Until we find out who the next guest is going to be, I have no idea, but that's the beauty of it. The creativity. And go Birds, beat Dallas. It's beat Dallas week, everyone. And I'll catch you guys next time. Fly Eagles, fly.